Guys, what's up? My name is Eris. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm actually showing you guys how I made this book tote bag. So basically I just wanted a second bag that I'll be able to put my books, to be able to put my food flask, my thermos, my snacks if I want to go to the studio, because the days of working from home is over. So this seemed like a perfect time to make this type of bag. So the fabric I used for this, it's actually jacquard. It's basically a woven fabric. It's kind of thick. It's a combination of different types of threads, so that gives it the texture and the design. So for the backing, I'm using some paper interface. I am using a thick lining, and the fabric itself, I am not using any hardware for this project. And these are the dimensions. You can always download this picture. I'm going to put the link in the description, so even if you don't get this now, you can always go down, download it, and you can use it for when you want to cut out your pieces. Alright, so first of all, before I start sewing, I'm going to take my outer pieces and I'm going to sort of just iron them with the non-woven interface. This one I'm using is not really thick because the fabric itself is already kind of thick, but I just want it to be a little stiff. And the method I'm using here, I'm sort of like doing a reverse ironing, where I use the part that has the gum to face the fabric and I iron it from the interface instead of putting the fabric on the interface and ironing it on it. But because the fabric is kind of thick, that is why I'm using this method instead. I just want it to stick on it enough so that when I'm working, the threads are not going to be fraying, and it's going to make it easier for me to work with it. So all the outer pieces, including the handles, is actually what I'm actually using the interface with. I'm not using it for any of the inner pieces, just the outer one to give it a little stiffness. You don't want it to be too stiff. If you're using a lighter fabric, you can opt for a thicker interface. But if you're using a thick fabric, then you can just stick with the lighter variation of the interface. Alright, so let's just lay our pieces out. So first you want to start with the handle. If you notice, the lining is actually a little shorter is a little thinner rather than the outer piece, so it's kind of intentional so that when we're sewing them together, it's a little, you have more fabric on the inner side. So first you mark the inside or at the middle of the piece, so you sew and you have your lining sort of sticking out and it's even on both sides. You're going to see why I'm doing this, but first things first, you just fold both sides in and you pin it down, and you're doing the same thing for both pieces. So I'm just going to fold this in and just take it to the sewing machine to sew one side first, and then I come back and I fold the second part. So you just want to make sure you're folding more on the outer piece and a little less on the inner, so when you finally close it, you're going to have like a sort of full handle. So if you're using a domestic, you should opt for lighter fabric, but if you have an industrial, you can actually stick with this type of thickness. It should be able to sew it with ease. So I'm just going to pin this second side to make sure it doesn't shift when I'm sewing, and I just sew that side straight. So this is the two handles now. You can leave it flat like this, or if you want to have the round handle, so I'm just going to measure 12 centimeter on either side, and I'm just going to mark it. So on both sides, and you're starting from the tip of the lining, not the outer fabric. So I'm just going to mark 12 centimeter for both straps. Just going to do that carefully so you have uniform finishing on either side before you clip it. Just sort of use a metal peg. So you see it's already getting really thick now because my inner and outer fabric are both kind of thick. But because I was using my industrial sewing machine, so I wasn't really bothered about this. but this is where you have to be careful. If you want to use maybe something like Ankara or something lighter, then you can use your domestic. But if you're using a thick fabric, then you should definitely opt for using an industrial sewing machine. So you get the gist. The thicker the fabric, the stronger the sewing machine. So I'm just going to sew this and stop on the lines that we've already marked out, so you can have sort of rounded handles. So I'm going to trim out the excess before we start to attach this to the panels. So just trim. So first of all, we mark 10 centimeter from either side. That is where I'm going to start pinning the handle. So this is the inner, but just for aesthetics, I think the upper part is going to be made with the same fabric on the outside to sort of give it this nice finish. So before we join the lower side of the inner panel, we have to just go on and pin it first. It's going to be a little struggle because it's just one fabric with one very strong handle, so it's still looking out of shape at this point. So I just fold it in, then on the 10 centimeter mark, I pin it down. So just those 2 points where I pin, I stitch it down first, and then I go ahead and I just clip the remaining parts of the lower fabric. And don't forget, the allowance is 1 centimeter here. So before we stitch down the remaining part of the handle, I'm going to now take the outer piece and pin it right side down. So you're going to turn it inside out at this point. I actually made a mistake. I was supposed to top stitch that place where I joined the 2 pieces for the inner panel, but if you are listening, you should please top stitch it. It just gives a neater finish. So here I'm just going to go on and clip the upper parts of the outer panel and the inner part. I'm just going to clip it together first before I sew it. And I'm going to sew just one side of it. So after sewing that one line, then you turn it inside out, but you don't fold it yet. While it's still open like this, this is when you now go on and stitch down the remaining part of the handle, and you're doing it all the way to the edge as far as possible. I mean, try not to mess up the closing, but just try to get to the edge as close as possible. So I'm just going to go on and pin this down, so when I sew it, it doesn't shift. So what I did is I just stitched 2 lines first, so this way the handle lays flat on it. So you fold it inside out. So I'm just going to use the clips to carefully, because I'm going to now try to sew this all the way around, so the whole piece, it's not going to merge and fuse to just be one. So you're going to sew this all around, and I'm doing the same thing for the 2 pieces. So whatever you're doing on one side is exactly what you're going to do on the other side. Alright, so now it's time to work on the sides. So it's a really similar thing to, let me just take the base out. So just on the side panels, you have the lining, the plain fabric you want to use. You're just going to go on and sew. You're going to join the upper and the lower side, just sew 2 straight lines, and the same thing, you turn them the right side facing each other, and then you sew it. So I'm just going to mark the middle point because the outer pieces for the sides, they are slightly bigger. Both the sides and the bottom are slightly bigger than the lining, and it's basically the way we're going to finish the bag. So we're just going to clip it down. We're going to have about 2 centimeters on either side. It's intentional, it's not a mistake, so you should not be worried about this. So first, I'm just going to go lay this one as neat as possible. I am not a machine, I am but a woman. So first, you clip it down. If you don't trust how steady your hands are, you clip it down first before you go and you sew. So I'm just going to flip this inside out, and just the way I did the front and the back, but this one I'm just going to sew down the upper side and the lower side. You don't sew the sides on this one, you can leave them open. Just sewing the top and the bottom is enough. So I'm just going to go on, clip these two down and then top stitch it. So this way it's easier to manipulate the fabric. Just going to trim a little excess here. So the next step now is basically joining these two pieces to the base of the bag. So we're going to do one side first, which is you just have your base, you lay it flat, and same thing, the right sides together, and then you put the lining on the other side. So you sort of sandwich the gusset in between, and you just stitch it down. So you do one side before you go to the other side. It's always advisable that way. So right sides facing inwards, wrong sides facing out. Then you're just going to sew one straight line through. So after sewing it, you turn it inside out and you top stitch. Sorry, I did that off camera. I couldn't take the phone to my machine. So you're just going to top stitch it, and you do the same thing for the second side. Just watch how I do it. So after clipping the second side, then you're just going to sew it before you turn it inside out, then you top stitch. So if you notice, the linings are basically the same size and the outer pieces are the same size. The allowance is what we're going to use when we're closing the bag. So at this point, I'm just sort of joining the sides and the base to make one long piece. So you turn that inside out, you turn it like this carefully, not to rip the fabric or not too hard. And then I'm just going to open it, then take it back to my machine for more top stitching. Okay, so now it's finally time to close the bag. I'm just going to trim some of the excess threads. And this fabric was testing me on so many levels, but I was able to work with it. So just watch closely how we do this first side. So you lay your piece right at the edge of where the lining ends, and you are going to just sort of fold it in and clip it on itself. And you're going to do the two sides first before you do the base. So it's not like once you do it, you're going to do it, sorry. I'm just going to trim anything that's going to disturb my work. So you fold it once and then you fold it on the piece itself. So it's basically just, I don't know, for people that make clothes, there's a name they call this, but I'm just going to fold this over on the side and pin it down before I take it to sewing. So this is basically the method we're going to use to close the sides of the bag to give it that like edge, the edgy feel. So you're going to leave 1 centimeter. You're not going to sew it all the way to the end. You just sort of leave like 1 centimeter allowance because you're going to attach the base. So the same thing, we're just going to double fold it over on either side. You're not doing the base yet, you're going to do the sides first, and then you just keep clipping, folding and clipping before you take it for sewing. Same thing, you leave up about 1 centimeter to the edge of the bottom of the bag. You don't sew it all the way to the bottom, and then you take it to the machine and just carefully take all the time you want. Just sew the edge in, and you're doing the same thing for both sides. So anything I show you now, just mirror it for the second side. Okay, so for the base, that 1 centimeter you left, it's actually what you're going to use to fold the bottom in. And if you got all your measurements right, it's going to fit at least almost perfectly. So you're going to do like a diagonal folding first, and then you fold one, and then you fold the second time on the bag itself. So you're just going to go all through the base, all through the bottom. It's just one straight line. So it's pretty simple if you take your time, and after a while you're going to get used to it and it's going to be easy. So I'm just going to do the two sides first. So you fold once. Sorry, let me tuck the side in so it's really flat and it's going to be easy for me to do. It's going to fold the sides in. So it's straight and smooth. So I'm just going to double fold. I don't know what's the name. If you know the name of this thing, please put it in the comment section. I don't know what I'm forgetting right now. But basically you're just folding it over on the bottom of the bag, and that's how you're going to finish the base. And just exactly the way you sewed the sides is the way you're going to just sew this one on a straight line, and it should get as close as possible to the edge. It's actually going to now meet up with the sides. So just carefully take your time, as close as possible. Just sew the edge of the base, and that is how you have yourself a new book tote bag. Alright, thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please comment and tag your friends. And if you have any questions or any requests or anything, you can just put it in the comment section, and I would love to hear from you guys.